The School of Shamanism, Master Tatankananda, returning to the earth a person at a time. You are listening to the School of Shamanism, and this is Master Tatankananda. Thanks for joining us today on the podcast, and I hope you find it enlightening and enjoyable. I am pushing and trying to proclaim to everyone the value of earth-based spirituality, not only as the truest way to approach spirituality on this planet we call Earth, on this place we call Earth, but also to show the necessity of it. It's absolutely necessary that we get away from the gods that want violence, the time film entities that demand violence, and the priests that they breed. In the next podcast, we'll be talking about the priests that are bred even when the god is dead, the priests that are bred even when the god is dead. But for this podcast, I want to talk about the two explanations of why the ancients, who were not stupid, why they believed in the gods. And there's only two answers that I can think of. Because they were not stupid, they were not gullible, they didn't look up in the sky and say, oh, there's a sun, it must be a god. That is completely made up. It completely infantilizes. It turns the ancients into babies. But when you look at what the ancients did, they couldn't have been babies. Look at the stone circles. Look at the monoliths. Look at the architectural achievements. Look at the sociological achievements. Look at the migration patterns. Look at the transportation improvements. They were not dummies. We have to get over this idea that we're the smartest people that have ever lived, and that everyone below us were some kind of dum-dums who just believed when they heard thunder there must be a thunder god, and that was the only explanation they could come up with. If they were that small thinking and that childlike in their thinking, why were they able to write some of the most beautiful literature there is in Greek, in Latin, in Assyrian, in Babylonian? Why do we have all those clay tablets? No. They were not dummies. In fact, Western society today depends on what was written by Aristotle and Socrates and the philosophical thinking of the ancients. We didn't just pop out of nowhere, but that's one of my main gripes of the fallout of evolution. The fallout of evolution has done just that. It's taught us that everybody before us were a bunch of dummies and uneducated and superstitious, and it wasn't the truth. So let's look at the two answers for why gods go away. I talked in early podcasts of how gods arise. They arise, in my theory, they arise when something traumatic happens at a place or time. That is, something traumatic happens and overexposes the time film. When that time film is overexposed, and then the people who hear about it, know about it, reinforce the overexposure with the human energy that believes the overexposure, that feeds the entity until it can take a life of its own, at which time it can then act, it can then demand, it can then receive sacrifices that feed it all the more. Now, the other theory, the only other theory that makes sense other than our ancient forebears being complete dummies and full of superstition, which I don't believe for one second. The only other answer is that the gods, the people that were called the gods, were aliens, that they came down from another planet, and that they were able to fool the people into thinking they were gods because they bedazzled them with their technology. Now, I understand that might work. That might work. If a being showed up from another planet, looked different, acted different, had lots of powers that nobody else had, I can understand that maybe, just maybe, they could be considered gods. But the problem comes not with how the gods arise regarding the idea of aliens coming to do it. The problem is, why then would the gods go away? Because we all know that gods come and go. Ra was once the god of millions of people. He came, he went. Baal, god of the Canaanites, came and went. Marduk, god of the Philistines, came and went. Mazda, god of the Persians, came and went. And I could go on and on and on. The gods come and they go. If, in fact, the time film is correct, the gods come and go based on the interest of the people, feeding them the energy they need to continue to pseudo-exist. But if, in fact, the aliens did it, why did the aliens ever leave? If they were worshipped as gods, treated as gods, if they were served as gods, why would they go away? Did they have it better on another planet? They stayed long enough to be worshipped. Why did they leave? This is one of the main reasons why I don't believe that we have been visited by aliens who gave us all kinds of technology and that we worshipped as gods, because they would have no reason to leave. Why would they leave? Why wouldn't we still have Marduk? Why wouldn't we still have the alien creature Baal? Why wouldn't we have the alien creature Yahweh of the desert? Why wouldn't we have the alien creature of Allah? Why wouldn't they still be here? Why do they have to work through people? Why does the memory of them have to work through people? In the time film, understanding of the gods arising and declining is due to the interest of the people and how much energy they put into the time film exposure. But if they were aliens, why did they ever leave? They should never have left. There's no reason they should ever have packed up and left with just a memory of them. Did they just stop by, cause a lot of commotion for a few thousand years and leave? If they had it that well on this planet, why didn't they stay around? That's why I find great fault in the alien invasion, the alien invasion of our planet. It doesn't make sense to me that the gods would leave in the first place. But an Earth-based explanation rather than an alien-based explanation is far more logical. The people lost interest. The people quit feeding them. Other cultures came with their time film entities and conquered the people who worshipped other time film entities. And as they quit worshiping the old god, the new gods arose. Gods come, gods go. However, if they were aliens from another planet being worshipped, like you see in history, why did they leave? Why did they go? Why don't they come back and reinforce what they had in the first place? Earth-based spirituality makes the most sense because here we are on Earth. And since we're on Earth, it doesn't make sense to try to explain human spirituality and human interaction with the planet and the time film which surrounds everything by replacing it with some alien invasion that fooled everybody for thousands of years and then left. So this is Master Tatankananda, and this is a big open question, a question that really has had the alien invasion idea and the idea that they showed up and became gods to the people, and that's one theory. The other theory is the hysterical superstition of the people, which did not exist, where when they saw something like lightning, they thought there was a lightning god. That did not happen. The people were not that stupid. So if the aliens don't make sense, because why did they leave? And if the idea that the people were so superstitious they made a god out of everything is not true, then there's only one theory left, and that one theory has been created just recently by me, and that is the time film entity based on the exposure of the time film. I understand that the time film is a theory all of its own. It's a hypothesis I'm putting out there, but it makes sense from all the facts that I can see and that I have seen over the years. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope it's causing you to think. And I would love to hear from you, of course. You can drop me a line at mastert@theschoolofshamanism.com. mastert@theschoolofshamanism.com. I'd love to hear your comments, hear what you have to say, and respond to you on a podcast. Or maybe, if you give me your contact information, call you up, record the call, and make a podcast out of our discussion regarding these particular theories. It's very important to get back to earth-based spirituality before we destroy the earth itself. If we can understand the time film, if we can understand how we have direct control over what we call the gods, if we can understand that we can create gods or not create gods, depending on what we want to do, depending on what we want magically from the universe, it's our business. We don't have to sit around and wait on aliens. We don't have to grow up from hideous superstition. We can use the earth as it is if we understand how these things arise. Now, in the next podcast, I'm going to be talking about the priests, the lying priests, who constantly insist the God is alive when they know the God is not alive. The priesthood of almost every religion is a complete lie. They are parasites living on a memory. Pastors, priests, rabbis, imams, living on the memory of a time film entity. They're living on the memory of what no longer exists, that has been reduced from a being that could act on its own accord. It's been reduced to a being that lives inside the memories of the priests, that become vectors. They become the promoters of the God that was. However, they can't get enough people together, enough faith together, enough devotion together for the energy to cause a manifestation of a time film entity. They can't get enough praise for all that. They can't get enough emotionally hateful destruction, with the exception of Islam. The podcast after I talk about the priests, and maybe when I do talk about the priests, I'm going to talk about the rise of Allah. We are in a very difficult situation right now in our world, because when terrorists blow themselves up in the name of Allah and they kill other people in the name of Allah, all of that energy is feeding the time film exposure that is called Allah, which was once called the moon goddess. So it's kind of a time film layer on top of a time film layer. But that's why Islam is picking up speed, and we may even expect Allah to manifest as a time film entity and cause everyone to think that Allah is in and of Allah's self a God, when in fact Allah is an entity on the time film, which has received so much energy on the time film that its density is greater than the time film, and it has manifested. I think it's getting to the crisis point of that sort of manifestation. Again, this is Mastert Tatankananda. Drop me a line, mastert at theschoolofshamanism.com, mastert at theschoolofshamanism.com. If you're listening to podcasts, scoot on over to the website that's under construction, www.theschoolofshamanism.com, and you are listening to Mastert Tatankananda.
Summer bride, clothed all in green, Jael to you, his mother true, rise up and be seen. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. The child who told from 3 to 4 is off to find a wife. But Balak came to make his claim and swore to take his life. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. From noon till night, then Lou did striking one, and Balla's eye flew in the sky, and there became the sun. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child of Polygon, newly summer born, ripening like the grain. made his bed with Erin in the north, and there they lay for many a day, and soon a child came forth. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child abolic on you, some of them ripening like the grain. At the festival sounds a horn, calling the people again. Child abolic on you, some of them ripening like the grain. To force a tenter was his name, and then at length and on a strength Cahul and he became.